Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Louise Edington, Cosmic Owl Astrology. This is an interview episode. I usually call them Tea with Louise, so I don't know if you got tea. I've got a blue can LaCroix. But, but this with me today, I have my friend Kat Collette. She's an astrologer and life coach, and she's developed her own multi-dimensional approach to astrology. And it kind of mirrors a lot with what's developed through my work in some ways. We just use different words a lot of the time, which is why we're kind of doing this together, and we'll do other things together. But Kat, it's based on her internal connection to the planets, which she understands through the language of frequency. She describes astrology as the quantum architecture of source consciousness, and she sees every chart as one singular perspective of source from one singular point, a specific set of coordinates in time and space. 100% agree. Anyway, so Kat's been exploring some of the larger astrological cycles over millennia and how they may be connected to our collective evolution. You could also find her in a recent video with galactic astrologer Julia Balaz, where she shared information about this Saturn Neptune conjunction and previous ones at zero Aries across the entire precession cycle. But I think you've discovered even more since then, right? So, yeah. So we're kind of going to talk about that. But anyway, welcome.
Thanks so much, Louise.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here.
So, uh, Kat's in a community that I run, the Spiral Codex. And I remember when I said I had listened to a webinar and some other astrologer pointed out that the last time Saturn and Neptune met at zero Aries was 4,300 and something BCE. I can't remember the exact date. And was that what set you off on it, or had you already been exploring these things?
Well, it really kind of started with my fixation more with the world axis itself
Mm,
rather than the
mm,
actual Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I've been kind of
mm,
obsessed with it really from right from the start. Um, I just noticed that because I have so many planets on the world axis, that every time we had an equinox or a solstice, I would just like everything, which I would go through like a complete metamorphosis. And like
mm,
I've got Jupiter, Uranus, and my MC at 0 degrees of Libra. So every time
mm,
the world axis gets activated, I've got stuff squaring all of that. And
mm. So just so everybody knows, my south node is zero Aries and my north zero Libra. But I also have a daughter who was born with a son at zero Cancer. So I've noticed the same thing, like all these zero cardinal points. Every time they're activated, or there was an eclipse at zero Cancer, and that nearly blew my head off. But anyway, so how would you describe the world
oh,
axis? Because I love
yeah.
how you tune into these energies.
Well, to be honest, I didn't really understand what it was at first.
Mm,
I just was, my focus was on 0 degrees of Aries and Libra. Mainly, I didn't understand I didn't know what the precession cycle was. I never even heard of it, to be honest.
mm,
But since I've been diving into it and I understand what it is, it's like so 0 degrees of Aries and Libra, they're like points, like nodal points almost that are
mm,
formed where the Earth's equatorial plane, like say, how the Earth's
mm,
tilted, it's kind of off kilter. And so it's
mm,
spinning, it's rotating on its axis, kind of pointing this way. And so, like, imagine if the Earth had rings going out like Saturn. So the
mm,
equatorial plane would be those rings that kind of go out. And
mm,
so where those rings where they intersect the plane of the ecliptic, which is, the horizontal path to the sun. Well, it's not horizontal, but you know what I mean.
mm,
Where those 2 points intersect, that's what forms 0 degrees of Aries and Libra. And I didn't know
mm,
that. And
mm,
so I didn't know that they were moving through the precession of the equinoxes. And so now that I understand that, I was
mm,
just like, oh my God, this is amazing. So um, so I was kind of really hyper focused on these two nodes because, like, if you draw a line between them and
Mm,
where the North Pole and the South Pole intersect, like it would go to the very, very core of the Earth.
mhm,
And so it wasn't really about the points as much as it was about this point, because that for
mhm,
me feels like, it's the 0 point. It's the zero
mhm,
point of Mother Earth. It's it's the part that it's where she's creating a whole reality from. And so it
mhm,
started to become more of like an activation for me to use, because I use astrology transits like activations. And so it was like, okay, I'm
mm,
going to connect my 0 point where I'm creating my reality from with the 0 point of Mother Earth as she goes through this activation, like on the solstice and the equinox and stuff. So
mhm,
so it was more of a kind of like me just creating like a really potent activation for myself, although I didn't need one because the solstices and equinoxes were really powerful. But that's kind of the way that I understand so every time the sun is at, on these cardinal points, 0 of Aries, 0 of Cancer and Libra and Capricorn, then
mhm,
this is what activates that point in the center. And so then I started having like almost like these memories of doing it, like in past lives. And I'm like, I feel like I've done this before. And so, anyway, so that was like how I got started into the Saturn Neptune thing. But all I wanted to find at first was where the last one was. I was just like, because when I connect with the chart, I connect with it in the future. It's like I bring it from the future into the now. And so I thought I can do that. I can go back in time and do the same thing, because that's how I work with the transits, is by bringing them into the quantum space and kind of using them,
mhm.
because everything's happening at once, right? So I was like,
Oh
how
yeah.
amazing would it be if I could find the last one and connect with that chart, like kind of combine it with my sacred geometry and see what see what that brings up for me. So I started the only way that I could find it was by finding every time that Neptune was at 0 and seeing
Mhm,
where Saturn was. And so that's how it started. I went back looking for all the places where Neptune was at 0 degrees. And then I was worried that I might miss some, like some other cool stuff. So I ended up going backwards in time and actually looked at every Saturn Neptune conjunction everywhere, going back in time for quite a while. I didn't go back thousands of years, but I went quite far. But then this patterns start to unfold, as you start going back and you see the patterns. And so now you don't have to do every single one. You can kind of predict where the next one of this is going to be and all that. Um, so I started to like all these patterns started to emerge, and some of them were small and some of them were
mhm,
big. And when I found my first one at 0 degrees, it was it was about 3,787 years ago or something like that, in the age of Aries. And then I found one that was there's like some that are quite close. There's some that there's one that's in Pisces, and there's one that's at
mm,
2 degrees of Aries. And so there's some other ones that are kind of close to that. But the first one that was right at 0 degrees, there's one at 2950. So I think that kind of counts. But the first one that was at 0 degrees was like exactly three astrological ages ago. And I'm just like, holy
mhm.
smokes, like
Whoa.
just like I didn't know. I thought, is this just random, or is this like part of a bigger pattern? So anyway, I listed them all like chronologically, and I actually made the precession cycle into a chart itself, like with all the ages going around it. And I tracked all the Saturn Neptune conjunctions. They were all tight together because 1 degree is 72 years, so they were all kind of squished together. But um what I discovered was that this was what blew my mind, is that 107, so I gave every conjunction a number, like a Saturn Neptune cycle. So the first one,
Mm,
like this one coming up, is 0. So the last one in
mhm,
Capricorn was number 1. The one before that was in Libra was number 2, and I went back like that. So I went back to 178 conjunctions, 178 cycles, which was 6,386 years, which was pretty much exactly 3 astrological ages. And what I discovered was, maybe I'll just, shall I show you a picture? Because
Yeah.
probably hard
Yeah,
to,
let's.
it's probably hard to visualize. Let's see.
And it's hard to go back very much further than that because most ephemeruses don't go back as far as I would love sometimes. But anyway, yes.
No.
Oh, I like this.
So yeah, this probably explains it in, a million.
Mm,
Picture paints a thousand words. So what I discovered though, like if you look at this, so this is the one that's coming up here at
mhm,
0 degrees of
mhm,
Aries, the one before in Capricorn, and then this one at Libra, was not only was the last 0 degrees of Aries one 3 ages ago, but so was the
mm,
Capricorn one. It was right before it.
mm,
So was the Libra one. It was right before it. And like
mm,
it's like this whole string of conjunctions of 178 conjunctions starts again here and repeats again through the next 3 ages,
mm,
but it goes slightly off kilter with the degrees because you can see it's like it's a bit ahead here. There's like it goes back about or it goes forward a degree almost like
mm,
you see this one was at 3 degrees 58.
mhm,
But it was, and so that sounds like it's really far away from the 0 point, but actually there was a slow dance of Saturn and Neptune going back and forth. And so
mm,
those were the ones that I was most interested in, was the ones that where both Saturn and Neptune go back and forth in this slow dance over the 0 point. They don't just meet
mm,
there once, because I felt like that was more significant the way that it has been
mm.
for us. Like it's been like the last year of I mean, we felt it for a whole year, the effects of, this
Oh gosh, yeah.
conversation. So,
And well, and to my mind, well, you know the cardinal points. Well, they're obviously like um the solstice and yeah, sorry, no, the equinoxes. Sorry, the Aries
yeah,
and yeah, I couldn't think there for a second, and Libra. But the other ones, the equinox, these zero cardinal points, they match in other cycles too. Like the path of the sun from our perspective makes this figure eight infinity pattern if you
yeah,
photograph it over a year. Anyway, I'm just saying that all these things kind of resonate, that it would
yeah.
kind of slow down, as you said. That's what triggered that, when it would slow
So yeah,
down going
it's
over the
just
0 points. Hmm.
exactly, yeah. And
Hmm.
so, but to get this, I want to make sure I remember to show you this
Mm,
because not only, not only do all of these conjunctions, like every single Saturn Neptune conjunction that ever
mm,
is, squares itself and opposes itself for infinity, but
hmm,
it moves slightly off kilter so that the whole
mm,
thing kind of spirals. And get this. So look at what else it does. So the one that's opposite, 0 degrees of Aries, was
mm,
45 degrees. If the precession cycle was a chart, it would be um, a semi-square to its
hmm.
opposite
Wow.
conjunction at 0
Oh.
degrees of Libra. And it goes like this. And so then it divides the precession cycle into 8. And
Mm,
so yes, and because
wow.
because
My
the
head, my brain's going. I'll
right,
save my
I
thoughts
don't
for a minute.
I was just I was like, is this actually real? While I was doing it.
Mm,
And then it's not just the cardinal ones that do this. They all do this. Like, look at this next,
hmm.
like 11
Oh
degrees
yeah.
of Capricorn and 11 degrees of
Mm,
Cancer. So
hmm.
some of them are a little bit off, but
Yeah.
it's doing the same thing. And
But a lot
so
of that's to do with apparent retrogrades, I think, and things too. So the slight
exactly.
offness.
Yeah, it
Hmm.
depends where the sun is, right? But
Yeah. Hmm.
so anyway, because I'm like you, I wanted to go out. I wanted to go even bigger picture. I
Mm,
I thought, well, if these squares are forming, then and once I
mm,
understood how the precession cycle works, I realized that from our
mm,
perspective, the fixed stars also seem to move. So then they
hmm.
would also move 90 degrees. from our perspective. So that's why I started to see that the same fixed stars were at play at
Mm-hmm.
these quarter points, like the quarter of it's like seasons of the precession cycle where certain fixed stars would become more prominent. And so that's why
Mm.
Julia and I like she had because I don't know anything about the fixed stars, like the myths really. And like when you Google it, it's all
Oh,
doom and
they're
gloom
well.
and
Oh, they're horrific. Yeah,
yeah.
the interpretation, shall I say? Yeah, yeah.
So Julia Balaz was like this breath of fresh air. Like
Mm-hmm.
she like deeply understands like the whole range of frequencies, from the denser, the whole range, like
Mm-hmm.
to how we can elevate the frequencies. And so I ended up
Oh,
bringing
sorry.
in, hang on, where am I?
I'm just looking at the one over on that last slide, the one in
Yeah.
Virgo. Can I just?
What? Yeah.
So Regulus moved into Virgo, of course, at the end of 2011, from our perspective. Just
Yeah.
saying. And that's also about the cycle of Sedna.
Right. Yeah. So, and do you think that um, what I'm wondering is
Mm,
because the Saturn Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries kind of rotates through the precession. I went
mm,
into the last precession cycle and the future one, and I
mm-hmm,
noticed that the cardinal points, they kind of seem to shift, that a modality seems to be prominent in each precession
mm.
cycle. Like these ones are
Oh,
the beginning of the fixed signs, like
yes.
the beginning of the age of Taurus, the beginning of the age of Aquarius, the beginning of the age of Leo. And now we're in these, if you think of this as a chart, we're
Mm,
exactly opposite where the age of Leo began, which is
mm,
apparently when Atlantis fell and all this. And so it's no wonder that these frequencies are alive within a lot of us, and we feel like we were there and we remember
mm,
these cataclysms and all this stuff. So it's no wonder that people, because I think this is a chart, it can
mm.
be, you know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the age of Leo is opposite to the age of Aquarius, and if you look at it as a spiral, it
Mm-hmm,
kind of goes up like that. It's not really a circle. It's not just a cycle. It's actually a spiral that kind of goes up. But you see how these are all opposing themselves. They're the same
mm.
exact conjunctions are all squaring and opposing themselves. So
I
there you
noticed
go.
you've got them in different colors. Is that for
Yeah, that's
the
just yeah.
blue for water signs and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
showing that. Yeah, it was just to
Hmm.
show that they're the same one, really.
Yeah. No,
So
no. I mean, I think everything is spirals, which is why I call my membership Spiral Codex, the Spiral Weave.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
Hmm.
So this
Yeah,
is
go on.
these are the fixed stars or the black holes or whatever that are
Hmm.
activated, and there are some other fixed stars that are kind of straddling that too. But
Hmm.
the fixed star sheet is right on this one, and
Hmm.
there's also a Kuiper Belt object called Borisov, and that's going to be conjunct Saturn and Neptune as well, and so is Kali. Well,
Mm.
actually, no, Kali is going to move in across the 0 point with Saturn. She's right behind
Mm.
Saturn.
And
So,
on March the 20th, 2033, we have the last Venus star point in Aries in our lifetimes at 0 Aries, by the way.
oh wow.
And then they'll be in Pisces after that. Um, so there's another activation. And you've read my book on Venus on Ceres, and Venus, Ceres, and Pluto met at that 0 Aries
Right.
point in 1823.
Wow.
So I think you
It's
see, I
yeah.
think they all converge together. All these things, I
Did
haven't.
you see
Yeah,
them as like eras or um like do you see anything
I
like
see all those activations of the degree as a process of bringing in the new age,
Mhm.
basically,
Yeah. Yeah.
over and over. Yeah,
And
yeah.
this is why I I wanted to use
Mm,
this because it's like
mm,
taking, I'll just stop sharing this for a second.
mm,
Because if you think about like these 2 points, like the Aries point and the Libra point, they're like points that go out. They're almost like the radar. It's like the nodes of the earth almost
mm-hmm.
picking up everything, within that
Yeah.
range kind of thing that goes into the very core of the earth. And so I think it's where the earth is like transmitting her frequencies and creating her reality, which we're part of. But then she's also
Mm-hmm.
receiving the energy through these points and through everything on her planet, like us. And we're receiving all these frequencies as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I want to connect with that energy. So that's why I did all this. And then when you bring the fixed stars into it, it's just like, oh my God, now you've got like you're going out into time and space as far as you possibly can, like with the precession and with the galaxies and all this, and then you're going to bring all of that
Mm-hmm.
into the here and now, and
Mm.
into the quantum space and use it as a frequency activation. So that's what I'm going to be doing this weekend on the solstice with those energies. And so
I kind of see it as the sacred hoop, basically, the Native American sacred hoop with the directions, with the
yeah,
earth right in the middle.
yeah, like the
Mm-hmm.
wheel. Yeah, the
Yeah.
medicine. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's and
Yeah.
it's where we're all kind of
I have
where we
pictures of the
create our
sacred
reality.
hoop everywhere around me.
You got
Oh
what,
my God.
sorry?
Pictures of the sacred hoop everywhere around me in various forms. So there you go.
Oh, I can't see it. It's blurry. You'll
No,
have
you can't
to
because some of them are over on the wall over there. But I just realized how many of them I have. I hadn't really quite realized. Sorry, that was a distraction. This is how we work. Both got ADHD. But
yeah.
anyway.
So yeah, and Borasisi, so get this. So Borasisi, that is
Mm,
also I think it's actually going to be at 1 degree. It's not going to be at zero. It's at zero now. But
hmm
Borasisi has this it's like a binary system, KBO. It has this, it's not a moon, it's like the same size object that it's kind of a companion called Pabu.
mm,
And it's it's connected, the myth and the story with Borasisi is about the Maya in Eastern philosophy, about this illusory energy that creates this experience of separation from the external world, but it's actually, it's literally an extension of our being, but
hmm
we experience it as separate because we're in 3D reality. It's like, I can't control my reality, so it doesn't feel like me, but it
mm,
actually is, and we're all one thing. So it's interesting because Saturn Neptune conjunction, for me, it's about dissolving the illusion of separation. And
mm,
so the fact that Borasisi is there and Goddess Kelly is going to be like, she's
mm.
always about destroying the illusion, right? Destroying the illusion of separation ultimately.
Yeah.
Um, so I
And
think,
really, really, the Venus star point is as well, because for those people that don't understand what the Venus star point is, it is literally a point. It's the conjunction between Venus and the Sun that happens every 9.5 months, but over decades it goes backwards through the zodiac like an invisible clock or heartbeat in the background. And we also always all have a prenatal Venus star point, so that's kind of like creating from the inside out as well, right? So
yeah,
and reaching that point of creation within you. So
yeah.
yeah,
And I feel like a
mm,
series is really connected to that too, because she's like the
mhm.
gatekeeper between two, like she's like the midwife that kind of taking you from one world into another, but she's yeah,
she
so it's all
She
they're all
literally
connected.
is. She
Yeah,
literally is. You know,
yeah,
the whole myth of Demeter, Persephone, and Hades, which is Ceres, Demeter, is really about the mind, body, spirit, or the shamanic worlds. The lower, middle, and upper world. I don't see them as literal myths, but the whole story of these myths is reunification. In the end, it's not
exactly.
it's rediscovering or remembering or reunifying, or whatever you want to call it, the fact that we're not separate from anything at
No,
all. Mm,
no. But it's hard, yeah, it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
mm,
Because we are, like when we're born, like we like when we're inside the womb, we're connected to source. So, well, we have that
mm-hmm,
feeling of being connected to all that we are because we don't have any needs. Everything comes through the umbilical cord. We've got,
mm,
we're carried, we're held, we're safe and secure, and we don't know what's going on. There is another world out there, but we don't know about it yet. And
mm.
so and then all of a sudden, we have to separate from the only world we've ever known and come out. And basically, we have to buy into our simulation that we've created as source. We have to believe we're separate. Otherwise, we can't survive. We just lay there. We just think, oh, I don't need anything because I'm source. But we have to cry. We have to use our voice. We have to ask for food. We cry. We
Mhm,
get lonely. We're trying to almost, it's like we're trying to get back to the womb, but we want that feeling of
mhm,
oneness that we had when we were in there. And
mhm.
um, so I think that
So,
this point between worlds, like between Pisces and Aries, it's like the
mm,
sliver between that point where we feel at one with our whole world, like where we're aware of the totality of ourself as source, is the same
mm,
point that we have to forget because 0 of Aries or 30 degrees Pisces is the same point. And so it's like that sliver.
mm,
Um, that
it
it's like
is.
it's the end and the beginning of the cycle at the same time. It's the point where everything is happening at once. It contains the whole cycle, really. All that was, all that
Mm,
is, all that ever will be. And so it's
mm. So just out of interest for everybody,
Mhm.
did you work out? I know it's really hard to do because the precessional cycle is so long.
Yeah.
But did you work out when they last met at 0 Aries? Did you
Yeah.
manage to?
I've got the date actually. Let me see.
Ooh, I thought she would.
Um
Uh,
so it went at 0 actually in Aries, 0
mm,
degrees of Aries.
yeah.
It was in 4,361 BC. That was right at the beginning of the age of Taurus.
Mm-hmm,
But there was one in Pisces, which was, and so that was at 0 degrees and 1 minute. So that's pretty
mm.
much exact. There's not been anything that I found that close. Like you can't get any closer than that. So
No, I remember looking at that one. That was really close. But that was about
yeah,
3 ages ago, right? So,
that's exactly 3 ages ago. It was
yeah.
because the age
So,
of Taurus started in 4320
mm,
BC, and this
mm,
was 4361. So it was like 40 years
mm,
before the age of Taurus. So it's pretty much the age of
mm,
Taurus. But there was one at the beginning of the age of Aries that was at 29 degrees and 50 minutes of Pisces. And
mm,
that was in the year 1752 BC.
mm.
So it's 1742 BC. So, and there's like that one was forming a square. You know how all the
Yeah, they,
conjunctions square themselves in the precession cycle? That one at 29 degrees and 50 minutes of Pisces in 1742 BC is squaring the one that happened at 0 degrees and 33 minutes of
mm,
the beginning of Age of Cancer. So there's like a cardinal one and a cardinal one, and then there's you know, um, I suppose it's a
mm,
mutable. The one at 4362 it was a beginning of Age of Taurus, but it's technically in the age of Gemini, and this one's like that technically in the age
mm.
of Pisces. So it's like a mutable square.
Yeah.
So you could decide whether it's the
Wow.
end of one or beginning of another one, but it's on the cusp anyway between the mutable and
Well, I think we take a
yeah,
little bit of time to kind of wobble between the
yeah,
ages, but I don't think there's
exactly.
a date. I
Yeah,
know
40
as
years. It's the
people,
cusp
yeah.
anyway. I think that it's the tipping point that, that would take
Mm,
us, because mutable to fixed is very different. It's a very different
mhm.
energy.
Oh,
And
absolutely. I just wonder what the full cycle of last time we moved into the Aquarius age. I wonder what the chart looked like then, but I bet it's impossible to find
which,
almost.
sorry, say that again.
where we were last time we were going into the age of Aquarius, like we are now.
Oh yeah, I do actually have um what I did, because I couldn't go back as far as that, because
No,
the
ephemeris don't do
ephemeris
it.
only goes back. You can get through a lot of the age of Virgo, but there's nothing in age of Libra or anything
Mm,
before that. So, but by the time I'd figured out the pattern, I was able to project roughly
mm.
where they were
Yeah.
within, within 100 years or so, because the pattern that is pretty, it's quite exact, really. But
Mm.
um, but yeah, I'm trying to remember. I did have all the other
Well,
ones.
it would be 4 times 6,386 years ago, I guess.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, except the degree would go further, because it goes higher and higher. It wouldn't be like the one in 12
Mm.
12,000 years ago was at 4 degrees, like three
Yeah.
degrees.
Yeah.
So it would actually get bigger, but you can figure out where the ones that are like at the end of Pisces, where they're going to go.
Mm.
So that's what I did. I
Mm.
spent hour hours and hours
Oh,
every day going through this stuff. It was like,
I can only imagine. I mean, I could do the same with the Venus star point. And talking about how that's slightly different each cycle, so is the Venus star point. So, and it has cycles and then greater cycles. And I think that's connected with the turning of ages as well. And I've got to do more research on the Venus star point and that. So,
yeah.
it's like
Yeah, because it does
yeah.
kind of turns like a spiral, like each
Mm,
five-pointed star is moves. So, but
hmm
I found some really cool patterns between. Do you remember how I said that I looked where Neptune was at 0 degrees every
hmm
165 years or so? So
hmm
I made a linear kind of string of all of those, and I wanted to
mm,
know where was Pluto, where was Uranus, where was Saturn. So I every time I looked at the ephemeris, I made a note of where they were, and I found
mm.
patterns that are crazy between Neptune and Pluto. And I found a Pluto-Neptune conjunction. I can't remember where it is, but I mean, there's so much you could go into here. But
Oh God, there is. Oh, I know.
but imagine
But
imagine Neptune and Pluto on the 0 point,
oof,
and then there was
wow.
yeah, it was like it was pretty potent. And then there were patterns for a whole age where every time Neptune was at 0 degrees, Pluto would actually be at 0 degrees of Libra, then 0 degrees of Aquarius, and then one
Mm,
degree of Taurus. And it was making this cool kind of pattern where it wouldn't be
mm,
any water signs for a whole age, and then it wouldn't be in any earth signs for another whole age. And so
mm.
there's something in there too. And eventually I'm going to probably dive into that too. But
Yeah, there's definitely probably more to find out. But so uh, well, trying to formulate my question with this. So what do we think it kind of means for where we're at now? Because I have my thoughts. So, but
Mhm.
you, because we didn't know about the existence of anything beyond Saturn. At least in this culture, we didn't know
Yeah.
beyond Saturn until 1781. I'm not entirely convinced that some of the ancient cultures didn't know more, but anyway.
Yeah, I think that first and
Mm,
foremost, we're going to get a whole new level of understanding in terms of what is about Saturn and Neptune. But I think that generally there's going to be like a huge shift, like a whole restructuring, really, in our understanding of reality itself,
mm,
and how it's actually shaped and constructed, and individually and collectively. And that we each have our own version of reality. I mean, it's
mm.
becoming clear that we're not all in the same reality.
Yeah.
And I feel that I'm projecting my reality out from my 0 point. So it's going to be different to everybody else's. And, not many people, you know, seem to see the same things I see. So I think that's going to be one thing that's going to shift, is our understanding of reality itself. And I think we're
Mm,
going to shift in our understanding of oneness, like it's not just going to be
hmm.
like a word that
Yeah.
a mental concept of, like a description word, like a feeling of oneness. I think it's going to be more of
Mm.
our understanding of one. We're one.
Yeah.
It's not a feeling of oneness where we're just interconnected. I think we're literally one thing,
We
seeing
are
itself
parts
in
of a big organism kind of
exactly.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like parts of
Mm-hmm.
the body, different
Mm,
cells. And
mm.
so I think we're going to really understand what it means to be one thing and that we are one thing seeing itself from all these different points in time and space, like our
Mm.
coordinates of our chart. That's how I see us
Mm-hmm.
all, kind of our perspective, but they're all together here and
Mm.
now. And I think what else is going to shift is, or it's already shifting, it's not gonna, but it's
Mm.
this I think it's about dissolving the illusion of separation. So understanding why this division is happening on our planet and how maybe we as one source have created this extreme illusion of separation from
Yes.
it's like pitting one element of source against another and deeming this one as non-source and this is wrong.
Oh,
Because when we judge anything or a person or something as wrong, not to say that it's like a good thing, for the world or anything, but it's like what we're doing is we end up reinforcing that into our reality more and more and more because
yes.
we get stuck in a manifestation loop with it.
Mm.
So I think that we're going to figure out that this is an elaborate game that we've created together to figure out that we're all one thing by discovering that we feel so separate from yeah, the more we judge something as being wrong and separate from us, the more it's just gonna get louder. So
Mm.
our external world is like our own system, our own feedback
Mm-hmm.
system, showing us where we think we're separate from it. So it's going to get louder and showing us that contrast is definitely playing out on our planet right. So
Definitely. Now I'm interviewing, and I sent you some materials that were from his book about the other age systems, like the yugas in
yeah,
India, and he actually researched the Mayans and all kinds of things. I am interviewing him on this podcast too. And, he said that we are at the end of this. The Kali Yuga basically is different to, by the way, the goddess Kali. They mean very different
yeah.
things. But he said, at the end of the Kali Yuga, that's when this basically he said we get stupider, but that's when we're the peak separation, control, domination, power over kind of thing
Mm,
really kicks in before this explosion of consciousness at the turning of the ages when we
yeah.
move into a golden age. And that's how I feel about the astrology. I mean, will it happen overnight? Probably not. But, it's happening fast, I think. I
Mhm.
described it this morning in a video I did as I was just like, this is insane. I said, it's not like the lotus flower opening up, it's like the lotus flowers exploding open
Yeah,
as the consciousness is expanding, right?
I agree. Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
because I think that I mean we tend to focus on what's collapsing, where all
Hmm.
the apocalyptic kind of feeling because we're human and it's about survival and
Yeah.
everything. But I think that destruction is just a byproduct of creation. And I think that
Yes.
collapse of the old paradigm is literally happening because we are creating the new and because we are remembering
Hmm.
who we are really quickly. And so the old paradigm of us has to collapse too, right? And so but what we're seeing happening on the world stage with all this stuff collapsing
Mm.
is just it's like the macro version of our own old paradigm collapsing as
Yes.
we elevate ourselves. And I don't think that it means that a cataclysm is going to, because I don't see the astrology as happening to us or these things happening to us. They're being
No,
generated
me
from the
neither.
core of us and we are creating all of it. So I think that the faster things are collapsing, the better, because it means
Mm.
that the new is coming in. But maybe in Atlantis times, like we're focusing on the collapse of something, but maybe it's because there was such a rising consciousness that was happening so fast that it was their
Mm.
version of what we're going through now. And so, but it's the same frequencies that are at play. And the separation. And I think that it was a similar thing for the Atlantean people because they got disconnected from the land. Like they were people that saw the soul
Yeah.
in everything and they were connected to the earth and like people that even, the people that were hunting and fishing and everything, they saw the soul in everything, and they felt
Mm,
connection with the earth, and so connection with source. And
mhm,
and then when they started to get their powers, they thought they were special, and they wanted to keep the information from themselves. And then the separation started, and they got disconnected from the earth. They were just served food. They didn't catch their own food or grow their own food or anything. They were just served. And so they got disconnected from the
mhm,
earth. They got disconnected from each other. And I think that's why, you know, it it went sideways, because it was the illusion of separation, but it was
mm.
part of the forgetting, remembering cycle. We always do that.
Definitely. But I love words, Gemini moon. So I look at the actual kind of etymology of the word cataclysm, and it doesn't have to be like a cataclysm like we imagine. Like
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be a disaster and a literal city going underwater, but it is the word kata means downwards. And I've long said that we are descending into our humanness, remembering it, our connection, if you like. And the middle bit of the word means to wash away, to flood. And cataclysmus altogether means deluge or flood. Well, what if we're just washing away these old beliefs and things? Why
Mm.
does it have to be like this? I don't,
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you
you know.
think about it, the Earth's
Hmm.
receiving the same frequencies as us. And
Yeah.
so this is her expression of that. You know,
Hmm.
she's she's like, look at all these volcanoes that are erupting and
Yeah.
stuff like right now. It's like, and earthquakes and stuff. Like, it's crazy out there. But
Oh.
this is Mother Earth. She's doing her thing. Like, there's nothing wrong
Hmm.
with her. This is just, it's like,
Hmm.
I mean, it's a problem for us when things like that happen, but so is,
Yes.
a problem for the ants when we go and step on them. But it doesn't mean, do you know what I mean? It's all neutral.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. And I think the Earth itself is an organism, and it's pretty pissed off at how it's been treated, to be quite honest. So, you know,
yeah,
it's like reminding us of how we're supposed to look after it. That's being kind of facetious, but also
yeah,
true.
because we're supposed to be, we're kind of running the earth, like we're guardians of the
Hmm.
earth. And I think that
Hmm.
the ancient people, they appreciated how much the earth gave us and the
Mm.
sun gave us, and that's why they felt that reverence and for the earth, because they're like, look at what grows for us, and all the food and
Mm.
everything is provided for us. And so they were, they were one with it. Now we don't even see ourselves as earth anymore. We just go to
No.
the shops, we buy our food, like we're disconnected from everything. And
I think people are starting to remember. Many are.
yeah,
You know, I'm really annoyed with myself. I'm trying to find the name of a quantum theorist. Anyway, I can't find his name, and it's annoying me that I can't. But he's not the only one. Like science itself, I think I started by talking about astrology being not being empirical. Well, science itself is realizing that, like, science is like connected spiritually as well as or energetically or in frequency, as well as just these, you know, empirical rules.
yeah,
And there's some quantum physicists who are almost seeing science as a religion now, which is kind of like a big flip from,
yeah,
you know, yeah. I can't
yeah.
remember his name, and it's really annoying me, but he's not the only one. And there's another book I read that was kind of in my journey towards all this, called The Flip, by a guy called Jeffrey Kripal, Kripal. It's a really kind of short book, but he has done a lot of research into so-called the unknown, the paranormal, and things like that. But he's actually a religious studies professor, and he talks about it in that, like, science is flipping, humanities is flipping. We're bringing in that um, je ne sais quoi, if you like, of the
Like the
humanities, of the art. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's like the union of the divine masculine and feminine in another
Yeah.
form. You've got the
Yeah.
science and the spirituality. It's like the
It,
masculine and feminine. It's another expression of that, I think. And
Hmm.
we're actually just going to bring them into realizing that they're the same thing. It's just
Hmm.
a different perspective. It's like the two, masculine and feminine, are like the two forces of creation. Like we
Yeah,
can't,
yeah.
we need to, yeah, we need both. So,
And
um,
going back to Saturn and Neptune, where we started with these big conjunctions, um, ignoring the myths, which yeah, I pretty much do these days. I don't see Saturn and Neptune as both masculine. That they're not like these patriarchal gods kind of thing. They are different kind of forces that are very yin yang as well, boundaries and boundlessness and all that kind of thing. So you could say that they are the union of divine masculine and feminine in many ways, energetically. I think we get too wound up with saying this energy is all masculine, this energy is all feminine, personally, because we're not, we're both, right? So,
I
mhm,
agree. And although
mhm,
I feel like Pisces, like Neptune is the, I know you don't like the word ruler, but whatever, the ruler of Pisces. And I think that like on Neptune for me, my experience with Neptune has been like really about connecting with the totality of all that I am as source, more
mhm,
than, and Saturn has been more about my individual perspective of source and being kind of more in
mhm.
my, you know, it's more about my 3D physical.
Yeah,
And so, and I relate to that, my human part as being more my masculine. It's the part that gets shit done. It's like, the part that
yeah.
does, and um and it's like it's almost like a container to hold
Mm.
the divine feminine flow, frequency so that they can flow and so you can create and you can do all
Hmm.
that stuff. And so in a way, I'm feeling like Saturn is more about, because it's more to do with my sovereignty. I feel like that's more my masculine side. And then
Hmm.
Neptune is more about my source, but I don't
Mm.
really think of them in, not like gender or anything. It's not like that. It's just about the
No,
energy. Yeah. It's because it's more about
I think
structure.
that's why I've come to have a bit of a problem with the terms
Yeah.
masculine and feminine because of the gender wars.
Yeah,
People just immediately relate that to that separation, where it's
exactly.
different, isn't it? As you're saying.
There's
Yeah.
more about the two forces of creation, I think, that I'm just trying
Hmm.
to bring. And I think that ultimately what this conjunction is showing me anyway, it's about being, but it's like having
Mm.
one foot in Pisces and one foot in Aries, where you've got
Hmm.
the version of you that is aware of all that you are as source and
Mm.
all that is, and you're not separate from your external world. And then there's a human part that's like, yeah, we are separate. It's the part of us that forgets who we are so
Hmm.
that we can experience a cycle of remembering who we are.
Yeah.
But I think what this conjunction means is that we don't have to die anymore to find out that we are source. I think that we're
Yes.
able to,
Yes.
and I think that what if when we die, we don't merge and dissolve into oneness? What if we become aware that the external world was literally always us, but we
Hmm.
experienced it as separate? And I think that's what we're moving into, a new level of awareness of that and being able to
Hmm.
kind of it's like a lucid dream. Like you're in a dream,
Mm.
it's your game of illusion of separation, and you feel all the humanness of it, like when it's brutal and you just
Mm.
like, holy shit, this is, but there's a part of you, almost like the watcher, that knows it's an illusion that is showing you, reminding you who you actually truly are, but you're also in your humanness, like experiencing the whole thing as your soul, but
Hmm.
through your human body. And I think that's what this conjunction really means for me. It's about bringing those two aspects together, source and human, and
Mm.
living, living that way, like with knowing that consciousness is our first it's the only substance
Mm.
in the universe. And so
Yeah.
when we know that we're consciousness first, then we do everything it's about the frequency, and that's what the age of Aquarius is about for me.
Yes,
Everything
me
is
too.
frequency. We're physical, and it's an expression
Hmm.
of the divine, but we're not separate from it. It's just
Hmm.
a dense. We have to be dense, otherwise we can't live here,
No,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's funny, I did a presentation on series for Kepler College, and I talked about, I think I found the percentages, and I think they're guessing pretty much. But anyway, really only 5% of the cosmos is Saturn. 95% is dark matter and dark energy, which is Neptune in
Yeah,
Pisces, to my mind.
yeah,
That's a
yeah. It's
big
like
ocean of consciousness,
yeah,
right?
filled with infinite potentiality,
Yes.
because it's like wherever there's the void space, it's like it's
Hmm.
filled with infinite potentiality. And that's what I really feel for me, what I'm excited about the
Mm.
most for this new era that we're already in is
Mm.
our whole new understanding of astrology and what we've been doing all this time. And like,
Oh,
uh,
please,
that's
please.
that's what I'm most excited about. And I feel like, some of us are like, we already feel like,
Mm.
we're there, and it's not about saying that this way. I think that, have you ever wondered why there's so many different seemingly contradictory approaches to astrology and they all seem to work? It's really weird,
I,
eh?
well, I always just say, always work.
Yeah,
Always work. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Because the way that we give meanings to things ourselves is
Hmm.
our reality is constructed basically from what we believe to be true. It always
Hmm.
matches. It has to correlate. Otherwise, we feel like we're in psychosis if it doesn't match.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so what we're projecting out is, that's our own holographic universe. And so that's the way that I
Mm.
think that our chart, the way that we see our chart, like, I mean, the way I see it is just, it's unique to me. And I'm not trying to say that it is what it is, but just,
Hmm.
I see the chart as, it's a map of one individual perspective of the universe, of all that
Yes.
is, from a specific set of coordinates in time and space, the coordinates that our soul brought us into form. And
Hmm.
so, and it contains, um, every angular frequency of source, like from that singular point.
Mm.
And so, it's like the macro cosmic, energetic architecture of
Yes.
of our quantum field.
Mm.
It's like our individual perspective of all that is. And so that's the way I see my chart. The planets are like the macro of what's out there, but it's all being repeated at every level down to the cellular level until, and
Hmm.
we think that, um understandably, it feels like the astrology is happening to us because it correlates with what's happening. But what if it's just a reflection of everything that we're projecting out? Like our
Hmm.
3D reality is a reflection, the planets are a reflection of everything that we're creating. And what if we're seeing it the wrong way around? Like, what if
Mm.
the ones that are projecting it out, and our human avatar has no clue. We're just going through thinking everything's happening to us, and we're just reacting to things. And what if the astrology is just mapping all of that out, not causing anything, but
It's not.
we've been using it to predict things because we're like, we're good at pattern recognition and all that, and we figure
Mm.
out the cycles. But we're doing it really to try and prepare and brace for what's coming. But, once we
That's
realize that we're creating all of it, including all
This is
these,
why I don't do predictions.
yeah,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
yeah, hmm yeah.
So
And to quote Stephen Forrest, one of my favorite elderly astrologers, he says, you usually, with the funny thing about predictions, you only usually hear when they get them right,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
not
And what
often.
we come to expect, it like, it shows up.
Hmm.
But when we change what we expect, and we, we throw a little bit of
Mm,
optimism in there and try and elevate the frequencies of what we want to happen rather than
mm-hmm,
like what we don't want to happen, and
mm,
focus on what we want to create and how
yes.
we want to feel rather than how we don't want to feel and avoiding it. I think that
Mm-hmm,
astrology will become infinite in potentiality
mm,
because especially when we go into the 0 point and do it from there,
mm,
and because that's where everything collapses down. It's the point of convergence,
mm.
but I think it's going out and it's going both ways,
Yeah.
as above, so below.
And as the soul, so the universe. That's the last bit of it, right? People forget that bit all the time. But, so yeah, so, I'm totally agree. My 0 point South Node
Yes.
totally agrees with everything you're saying. I know you and I see this, and I don't think we can, well, again, because we can't predict. It's how we deal with this big shift and expansion of consciousness that we're going through right now, individually and collectively, how that will shape where we're going from all this, I think, really.
Mm.
And
And
I
I
think,
love the mystery of that.
and as astrologers, I think we have to be responsible about what we are creating through the world of astrology, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Because and a lot of people are really in fear right now. So I think
yeah.
it's quite irresponsible to start talking about cataclysms and all that
Oh,
when people are in the thick of it,
hmm, yeah.
and just holding compassion for them and seeing them in their power,
Mm,
and knowing that it's all going to be great. It's going to be magical, and like we can't wait to
hmm,
see what's going to happen. It's just like this is
mm.
magical. It's what an extraordinary time to be alive
Oh,
right now.
amazing.
And
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 that
I
and that's
know,
why I try to be inspiring in my videos because I just know that if we choose collectively,
but
it is going to be magical.
I also know that a lot of people, including, people that are very close to me, my friends and family, are also
Mm.
really struggling right now. And there's a lot of
Oh,
people feeling grief and
oh,
uh, feeling
absolutely.
like everything's
Hmm.
meaningless, like with Neptune
Mm,
in the birth canal. It's like there's a sense of
mm,
meaninglessness, and like you don't know. It's like you feel like you're living in a virtual
mm,
reality, kind of are. And so
mm. I mean, I
everybody,
have I have absolute compassion for them, and I hold space for clients in that space, yeah, of course. But I also hope that I can give them that hope so that they can perhaps see a light at the out of their dark night of the soul or whatever they're struggling with, right? So
can do that with our Sagittarius optimism, right?
exactly, yeah. As we record this with the Sagittarius new moon and three-eye Atlas closest to Earth, and it's on my ascendant.
It's absolutely bonkers, eh? And on the world axis, and then the
I
solar
know.
surface, and yeah, it's there's I think we're going through a massive upgrade here, and
Hmm.
things are coming online that and I feel like we're just getting started too.
Oh,
Uh,
me too.
and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see what happens. So
Yeah. I hope this physical bit of my body lives long enough to kind of see some of the good things coming in that I think will come in.
yeah, me
But
too.
yeah. Mm. Well, Kat, I know you and I could talk forever about this because she's in the community I run. We talk about this quite often anyway because we have weekly calls. But I think there's more to come on these conversations, and so Kat's going to come back on probably fairly regularly. Um, I could see us writing a book, how to do astrology well for the for the Aquarian age or something. I
I
don't know.
love it.
Because I'm
I've
on
been
a bit of a mission to change the world of astrology, as I know you are too.
And it's so refreshing to talk to someone who really wants to do that. But
Mm,
um, yeah, I think that just by doing what we do, we don't have to preach
yeah,
anything or like because
yeah.
nobody's ever doing anything wrong. But
No.
the more we weave these different perspectives in, the more people
Mm,
will Because if they don't resonate with it, then they don't resonate with it, right? So it's
Oh,
just,
exactly.
yeah,
But I think my biggest thing is just saying, just because the last time this aspect happened, this disaster happens, doesn't mean we're going to get a disaster again or the
exactly.
same. Exact. That's my biggest thing. Like
Yeah.
putting that fear out. Yeah.
The fixed star sheet, which is conjunct
Mm,
this Saturn Neptune, it's at 29 degrees 44 Pisces. It's part of the Pegasus constellation. It's
mm,
all about that kind of those solutions, those divine solutions coming in at the last minute, that optimism that
mm,
like, I don't know what's going on, but I know it's going to be okay. Like it's like,
mm,
comes in to kind of save it, but it's about us just having that faith and knowing
mhm.
that yeah, it's going to be okay. It always is.
It
It
always
always
is.
it always
And
works
of
out.
and of course, because of precession, that fixed star will move to that 0 point of Aries in a few years,
Right. Right.
from our perspective. Woo!
Right.
That'll be good. I want to find that date now. Okay. Well, I think we'll call it a day. I hope we've kind of we may have blown your mind to the listeners, but also I hope we've kind of opened your mind a little bit to kind of just open up your perspective a little bit about where we're at. Every time everything I look at in the astrology right now, from the Saturn Neptune at the 0 point to the Venus star point going back to the zero Aries point, and all the things, we are in a totally extraordinary time. And so um it's unknown, so I think all we can do really is embrace it, right? And create. Yeah. Any last words from you, Kat?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think
Hmm.
that just even if, like take what resonates here, like everything that we've shared, I know that some of it's definitely out there, but
Hmm.
if there's any part of you that feels like it might be true,
Mm.
and what if my external world really is reflecting something to me? What would it be reflecting? Like you could just ask that question and contemplate on it
Mm.
and just see where that goes, because I feel that would help you to like tremendously.
Mm. I agree.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I wish everyone a happy new moon solstice for the
Yes.
weekend. And yeah,
And
and
happy whatever holidays you celebrate and all those things.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Until next time, Kat.
Bye.
Bye.